This video is the ultimate guide to start your very own wholesale business selling on Amazon FBA in 2026, step by step. I'm going to give you everything you need to know to get started making money with Amazon, a $1 trillion company, buying products in bulk without running any ads, creating any products, or buying stuff from China. Let's get right into it. So obviously there's a lot of people that talk about doing this stuff, but very few people on the internet who actually do it at a high level. So I wanted to not just talk about it for you guys today, but bring you guys the #1 authority on the internet about Amazon wholesale, my buddy Brad right here, whose team sells over $10 million per year with Amazon wholesale. So he knows everything about suppliers, brands, distributors, negotiating with suppliers, exclusive, and everything that goes into the Amazon wholesale model. So Brad, thanks for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Miles. Great to be here.
Absolutely, man. Obviously, we've done some good work over the years together too, as well. And so I mainly talk about online and retail arbitrage on my channel. Do you mind explaining how the Amazon wholesale model works and what makes it attractive going into 2026?
Yeah, absolutely. So Amazon wholesale is very similar to arbitrage in that we're selling name brand products that customers already know, like, and trust, right? So we're able to look at the Keepa chart. We're able to see product demand on these products. So we're not reinventing the wheel with wholesale. We're looking at stuff that already sells. The difference between wholesale and arbitrage is in how we source our inventory, right? And so with wholesale, we are buying from either authorized distributors or buying from the brand directly. And we're buying this inventory in bulk. And for us, we buy the inventory in bulk, we ship it to our warehouse, and then we reship all of those units out to FBA in bulk. And then Amazon still takes care of the rest. So very similar to arbitrage. It's just the main difference is that in how we source our inventory. And to the second part of your question, Miles, and how is wholesale really going to be growing in 2026? If we look at the Amazon platform as a whole, we can see that there are over 350 million product listings on Amazon, and there's only around 2 million active sellers on the platform. So if you look at it from a sheer data standpoint, like, the statistics are very much so skewed in our favor as sellers. But in doing this for now almost a decade, I'm constantly seeing brands shifting in their mindsets around Amazon. So brands are becoming increasingly aware of the importance of the Amazon platform and how the Amazon platform plays a role in their business as a whole, right? So the Amazon platform is just another platform that fits into their entire ecosystem. So the opportunity is massive in 2026. A lot of people say, it's dying or it's dead, which couldn't be further from the truth. If anything, I think there's more opportunity now than there used to be because the bar has never been lower, right? So there's so many sellers out there reaching out to these brands, which is why seemingly, us as sellers, when we reach out to brands and wholesalers, we're faced with a lot of rejection. But when we approach it from a different angle and represent ourselves professionally, legitimately, we can see that we will set ourselves apart from all of these other resellers out there. And there's actually an opportunity to come in with a strategic edge from the rest of the competition that's reaching out to these brands.
Yeah, 100%, man. And so what makes wholesale attractive basically is obviously compared to private label, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You don't need like 10 or 20 grand to start. We'll talk about the capital requirements a little bit later. And you don't need to do any fancy marketing, run any ads. You can down the line for exclusives. We'll talk about that. But as a beginner, you don't need to worry about that, obviously. And then compare it to online and retail arbitrage, it's just more of a professional and sophisticated business that I love for people to move on to after they do good work with online and retail arbitrage. Does make sense definitely for some people too as well, once they understand the Amazon platform or even as a beginner. But obviously no order cancels, working directly with the brands, getting approvals really quick, and just being able to buy products at lower prices in bulk. Interestingly enough, though, most of the time, like, a product on Amazon is either like an OA product or a wholesale product. It doesn't typically come from both sources. So obviously identifying those is really good. We're going to talk about the product research side of things as well. So in terms of actually getting going with the Amazon wholesale model, so obviously you need to have an Amazon seller account. What other stuff do you need to have in terms of having all your ducks in a row? Because obviously I do think there's more requirements than on the online and retail arbitrage side of things.
Yeah, definitely. So there's three main things that you're going to want to have to start doing wholesale. Number one is a business EIN, which is free to get. You can get it on the IRS website. and that legitimizes you as a business, right? And so it's going to be a unique number that the IRS gives you. And a lot of wholesale suppliers are going to ask you for your business EIN. So that's why I always say it's definitely a prerequisite. Prerequisite number 2 is a business resale permit, also known as a sales and use tax permit, also known as like a tax exempt certificate. And what this is going to allow you to do is, one, it's going to allow you, most importantly, to purchase your goods tax exempt, right? Because when we sell our goods on Amazon, Amazon collects and remits sales tax when they're sold through the platform. And so we don't need to be double taxed when we're actually purchasing the goods. The supplier that you work with is also going to want to see your resale permit as a document. So again, something that you're going to need going into the outreach process when you start reaching out to suppliers. And then the third and final requirement is going to be a business email domain. So I always say you don't want to be contacting these brands from hockeyplayer1234 at yahoo.com. You want to be professional, legitimate. And in order to do that, you want to have a business email domain. So that means your name at your company domain or sales at your company domain, just to represent yourself a little bit professionally. You don't need a website to start, although it's, kind of a nice to have. But you definitely don't need a website to start. Like, you can start reaching out to these suppliers by simply having your Amazon presence, and also having those 3 requirements. An LLC is good to have. It's a good business practice to get into because you're limiting the liability when you actually sell your goods on the platform. So God forbid, if you sell a product on the platform and a customer comes back and sues you, not saying that's going to happen, but God forbid it does, you are protected from a personal and business asset standpoint when you have an LLC.
Sure. Okay. And then in terms of capital requirements for the wholesale business model, right? Because a lot of people think you need like 15 or 20 grand to get started. When you do wholesale, I do think you need more money than online arbitrage. Online arbitrage, like 1 to 2K to get started with. Wholesale, sure, it can work for around that much. But from your perspective, what typical capital requirements should someone have going into wholesale, whether it's transitioning from OA and RA or just in general starting from scratch with the wholesale model and calling these brands and distributors?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're transitioning from RA and OA, first of all, you're in a great position to do that. If you're already selling on Amazon, you've probably accumulated some capital through retail and or online arbitrage. So you'll just reinvest that money into wholesale. I generally say a good starting point for capital and wholesale is $2,000 to $5,000 to get the ball rolling, right? You'll probably need more to scale. To big numbers, you're going to need more money to scale. But to initially start, $2,000 to $5,000 is a very healthy amount. I would prefer closer to that 5,000 mark. It's going to allow you to scale a little bit quicker. It's also going to allow you to spread your capital across multiple different wholesale accounts. And that's another thing that I advise for beginners is don't dump all of your capital into one wholesale deal right away. Spread it across a few to mitigate risk, and take the profits that you make from your sales. Once you buy that product and you sell it on Amazon, take the profits that you make, reinvest it back in, and continue to snowball that over time.
Yeah, and that's the cool thing is with the reselling model, whether it's arbitrage or whether it's wholesale, they're both basically just reselling. You can really build a, compounding capital machine. And that's what you've been able to do, the past couple of years, literally to an 8-figure per year empire at this point too, as well. And the nice thing with wholesale, guys, you don't need a warehouse. Like we were just talking about, you don't need an unbelievable amount of money. You don't need a ton of crazy business experience. You just need those couple of requirements we talked about, and then to make sure you have the capital side of things taken care of too, as well. Now, there's 2 ways to source wholesale products in terms of actually where they come from, right? So there's brands and there's there's distributors. Do you mind breaking down the difference between the 2 and which you like better?
Yes, sir. Absolutely. So when we look at wholesale suppliers, right, we, like you pointed out, Miles, we have 2 categories of them. We have distributors, and we'll talk more about authorized distributors and some red flags to look out for in distributors later. But distributors. So what is a distributor? A distributor is a business that already maintains a relationship with the brand directly. So the brand is the business that produces the goods and manufactures the goods and does all the marketing for the products and their brands, right? The distributor is a B2B entity that's already buying from that brand and then resells to a business like you or I, right, to then sell on Amazon. The brand directly is has all of the vested interest in the brand, right? They created the brand, they started the brand, they launched their new products, they set out for they set their marketing strategy and their company mission, right, and how they're going to go to market. And that is the other way of sourcing, is to go directly to the brand and purchase your inventory directly from the brand, and take it a step further, which is what I've done in my business, is become a brand partner with these brands. And that basically means that you are strategically working with the brand to grow their Amazon sales and their presence. And we even partner exclusively with many of our brands where we are the only authorized seller that's allowed to sell their products on Amazon in exchange for providing them with a ton of value.
Yep. And that value being, I assume, like making sure the listing looks good, ads and stuff you don't have to worry about when you're a beginner. But to get that type of exclusive relationship and be their brand partner, like Brad was talking about, that can be a really, really good way to value add and give them a reason to have you as their Amazon partner for that sales channel of their business. That makes sense?
For sure, sure. Yeah. And one thing I do want to point out is that you definitely, like you pointed out, Miles, you don't need to be an expert in all of these different things. You don't have to be an expert in running ads or, content or optimizing listings, right? You just need to be able to speak on these different components. And I could guarantee that a lot of people watching who are already, if they're already doing arbitrage, I would venture to say that if you're already doing arbitrage, you already know a lot more than most brands out there know about Amazon, just from a pure logistics aside, from shipping, from dealing with the Amazon platform as a whole. You already know the game to a certain extent. So use that knowledge to your advantage if and when you transition into wholesale and brand direct, and just go into it knowing that you do have a lot of knowledge on Amazon, and a lot of these brands just simply don't.
Yeah, they're not watching Flips for Miles. They're not watching Operation AMZ, you know what I'm saying? So they're not getting that game on that stuff. So for beginners who want to start finding their first couple products, first couple suppliers, right? With online arbitrage, typically you find the products and then go out and track them down. Most of the time when you're a beginner with the wholesale model on Amazon, you find the suppliers first, or the brands if you're, talking about the brand direct model. Talk through okay, finding your first wholesale product, right? Give me maybe the top 3 product research methods you love for Amazon wholesale in 2026.
Yeah, absolutely. So the way I like to start my product research process is by doing reverse sourcing and starting the process on Amazon, particularly in Keep a Product Finder. And in Keep a Product Finder, what we are able to do is we are able to set our criteria from a sales volume standpoint. We're able to see how many units are the products moving, what is the sales rank of those products, how much competition and sellers are we competing against, how many different what is the historical price over time. And by looking at those different KPIs on Keep a Product Finder, we are able to set ourselves a filter that really niches down and provides us with tons and tons of wholesale products and different brands that we are able to then source. And so once we've identified all of those different products that may be of interest, we'll compile those into a spreadsheet, and then we'll go and search Google for either the authorized distributor or the brand directly. And we'll go to the brand's website, we'll get their contact information, and so on. I do want to point out that my first wholesale account was with a local distributor right down the road from my house. So when you're first starting, don't be afraid to get scrappy, right? Search Google for local distributors, brand name in your area. And what that's going to allow you to do is you're going to find smaller distributors that are more receptive to working with you. And they'll be even more receptive to working with you because you're local too. And so the contact that I had at that initial distributor, he saw I was just starting a business and he wanted to help me out. So he gave me really good pricing and we started to build our relationship from there. And that's one thing to point out in wholesale, is that it's very much so a relationship game. Whether you're building relationships with brands, with distributors, sales reps, you're in this game to provide value to other businesses, and in turn, they're going to provide that value right back to you.
Yeah, 100%, man. So reverse sourcing, so basically storefront stocking. The big key is to make sure you're doing it off wholesale products. So making sure that a lot of the sellers and listings have 500 plus reviews, 1,000 plus reviews, etc., and that they're not carrying a lot of products that are filled with no review sellers, which would probably be more like arbitrage products. The nice thing is, in terms of getting buy box in those listings, the review count doesn't really matter for buy box that much, in case you're worried like, okay, how am I going to compete with those big sellers? Amazon wants to rotate the buy box to everyone. They just want customers getting really, really good experiences on their platform. And, on a listing, the nice thing about wholesale is you typically a lot less competition on listings. If there's only 5 to 10 sellers on a product, it's only can be so spread out across the country. So there's probably not someone right next to you. And even if there was, you'd still get a good amount of buy box share. With that, as well as the Google method to go ahead and just see local distributors as well. Talk about the trade show model, because I know that's something you like talking about in the group and that you've had a lot of success with too.
Yeah, absolutely. So trade shows is a great way to build in-person connections, and I highly recommend industry-focused trade shows. So trade shows like the Fancy Food Show, Expo East, Expo West, which is like health and beauty and household products. I highly recommend industry-specific trade shows because that's going to allow you to really have those one-on-one conversations with brands. So I like to go into trade shows, though, having already taken a look at who's going to be there so that I don't just go in blind. So what I'll do is, like, let's say we're interested in going to the Fancy Food Show. We'll go to the Fancy Food Show's website and we'll download the exhibitor list. And then we will have our virtual assistant source through all of those booths and brands that are going to be at that trade show. And then we will compile a list of contacts from there based on the demand on Amazon. So we're going into it knowing we're hitting X number of booths and we know that these products already sell on Amazon. So we're not just going into it playing a guessing game. We want to validate the demand that those brands are actually selling on Amazon before we actually go into the show, because you could have a great conversation with a brand, but if it doesn't sell on Amazon, and then you realize it doesn't sell on Amazon, then, it's not going to be that exciting for you.
Yeah, totally, man. And so something that's gotten some Amazon sellers in, kind of pickles over the years is going to be red flag suppliers and just suppliers that don't end up being legit. So can you talk through supplier red flags so everyone can avoid buying from potentially, stolen good suppliers and just scam suppliers in general? So talk about those red flags.
Yeah. We see a lot of this on Twitter. So it's really important to vet your suppliers. And so if you're going directly to the brand, you are by nature doing a much safer business model in that you're not working with a middleman. You're working directly with the brand. So when we talk about supplier red flags, oftentimes we're referencing the distributors that buy from those suppliers. So several red flags right off the bat are if you reach out to a distributor and they are pushing you product, or they send you lists of products with ASINs in them. Now, I'm not saying every single distributor that sends you a list of ASINs is a scam, but if they are very pushy with sending you products and they're pushing purchases, on you, then it's just something to be aware of, right? And to maybe take a step back. If the profit margins seem abnormally large and like too good to be true, again, another red flag. Take a step back, slow down. And that's what I say for a lot of beginners, is that the main difference between a brand new beginner in wholesale and an experienced seller in wholesale is that when a good deal comes across your plate, as a complete beginner, you jump on that opportunity. But as an expert, you question that opportunity. You say, is this true, right? Especially if the profit margins are abnormally large. On top of that, if you're getting contacted in your DMs on WhatsApp,
Such a red flag.
Discord,
Telegram.
I was just going to say, yeah, you want to definitely avoid those platforms at all costs. It's just going to be like a cash grab. And the main concern here is that we are buying the inventory that is not authentically purchased from the brand. And that's what's going to get you in trouble with Amazon. So if you buy from a distributor and they are not actually buying true and authentic inventory from the brand, then Amazon is going to and you get an issue with Amazon, you are not going to be able to validate that supply chain, and it's going to put you in a bad position with Amazon account health.
Yeah, 100%, man, too. So we know the red flags. What is basically a green flag? Like, how do you know a supplier is good? What are the good signs? Talk through that.
Yeah. So if you can see that the supplier has a strong web presence and, they have a Google page, and you can see that they have a business address, and they have images of their facility. And the most important green flag is by far that they are authorized by the brand. So you can go directly to the brand and obtain a list of authorized distributors. And you are eliminating all of your risk by doing that, because now the brand is saying, hey, here's our list of distributors. And if you're contacting a distributor that is on that list, you're good, because the brand has already validated that supply chain for you. So those are definitely some green flags. I always tell people, focus, or if you can get that authorized list of distributors, that's going to be the best position you can be in. If you're unable to contact the brand, then you may want to consider asking the distributor for either an invoice showing that they have proved purchase with the brand, or some form of redacted documentation of an agreement that the distributor has with the brand.
Boom, cool. That sounds good as well. So in terms of, let's figure like finding your first couple of stuff like working from home, reverse sourcing, aka storefront stocking for wholesale, what would be your basic winning product criteria, and what key data points do you look for that indicates that it's a good wholesale product to work on finding a supplier for?
Yeah. So there are three main criteria that I look at when I'm sourcing. Number one is, what is the average selling price? Number two, what is the unit volume per month? How many units are moving? So the two of those multiplied together is your total monthly revenue. And is the brand well represented on Amazon, or are they poorly represented on Amazon, or somewhere in between? And so what I mean by the representation on Amazon is, are their listings really strong? Do they have really good imagery? Do they have A+ content? Do they have, what's the history of their price? When you look at Keepa, is it constantly up and down? Do they have resellers that, shoot up to 50 and then back down to 20? Is their reseller scene kind of like all over the place? And so that's what I'm referencing when I say the presence of the brand and the representation of the brand. And so we actually target brands that are underrepresented, because then from there we're able to come in and provide value to that brand and show them how we are different than all these other Amazon sellers and provide value to them. So those are the three main concepts that I'm looking for. In terms of some more tactical advice that I'm looking at in Keepa Product Finder, is one thing I like to look at is the stock count in the other resellers that are on that listing. So are they stocking those products in high quantities? Because that's going to indicate to us that they're getting the products through wholesale, which means that we can also likely get those products through wholesale. We'll also want to look at things like the 90-day average price. So did it constantly sell at a price that was at a level where we can continue to make money, or is the price continuously up and down? The sales volume, so I'm looking at seasonality, right? I want to see, is this product seasonal? Is it going to sell over the course of the year? Is it an opportunity that I'm just going to be able to capitalize on in November and December? Competition, right? I want to see a consistent number of resellers on there. I don't want to see 20, 30, 40 resellers on the listing. I want to see under 10. And I think that's one of the biggest differences between
massive difference.
wholesale and arbitrage, is that I want to see about no more than like 10 to 15 resellers. And anything above that, if I'm sourcing a product, anything above like 10 to 15 resellers, that means that I'm probably going to have a hard time jumping into this with a purchase from the brand and actually starting to make money right away, because there's so much competition. So those are some of the KPIs that I'm looking at when it comes to sourcing for wholesale.
All right. So we know what good products look like. We know what good suppliers look like. Outreach, cold calling, cold email, negotiating tips, how to answer the deathly "we don't sell to Amazon sellers" objection. Talk to us. What should we be saying? How should we do outreach? How much outreach should you do per day? Talk to us on that, because that's something with the wholesale coaching you've been really, really helpful with in terms of getting, our students ready to roll in respect to getting accounts open, handling objections, providing value, and everything like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is going to be my favorite part of the video, because outreach is where you make a lot of money. So You want to be contacting at least 50 suppliers per week. And so when I first started doing this, I transitioned from arbitrage into wholesale, right? And so I wasn't sold on the wholesale model yet. I didn't know if it was going to work. So I set myself a goal in January of 2020. And I said, over the next 90 days, I'm going to contact 100 suppliers per week. And if nothing gets done that week, that's what I'm going to do. And by the end of 3 months, I had myself a pretty good business, right? That was growing. And so if you are not constantly reaching out to suppliers, you're not going to be growing your business, right? So you have to be hitting those thresholds, at least 50 suppliers per week, preferably 100. If you could hit 100, you're going to grow.
Oh, you're going to be
I mean, we've
crushing.
seen with,
Yeah.
some of the students is like the ones that are focusing on growing and just reaching out to 100 plus suppliers a week, they're just scaling massively. So it's all going to be dictated by that input. In terms of outreach strategy, right? So most of the brands and distributors, for that matter, that you reach out to are going to say, we don't work with Amazon sellers. We're not taking Amazon sellers right now. And so I approach this in a simple but multi-step process. So step number one is, when you hear that dreaded, we aren't taking Amazon sellers, don't say thank you, goodbye, and hang up the phone.
That's
right?
the biggest mistake, is giving up
Yeah.
immediately on the first small point of resistance.
That's it. And so, but here's the good news. Most Amazon sellers are doing that. So if you can keep them talking on the phone, you're already ahead of 90% of the people. So how do you do that, right? Step number one is, when they say we aren't taking Amazon sellers, you want to validate that position. And so bear in mind, when you're contacting the brand or distributor, they don't know you and you don't know them. So you have to build a level of rapport and trust. What's the best way to do that? It's to put yourself on the same side as them. So I like to say, that makes, like, if they say we're not taking Amazon sellers, I say, completely understand where you're coming from. That makes perfect sense. And then I will go into my social proof. So I'll say, completely understand where you're coming from. That makes perfect sense. We encourage the same thing with our existing brand partners, telling them that we kind of have an arsenal of brands that we do this with already. And so from there, I would then hit them with a calibrated question. The calibrated question is designed to ask them something where they start to explain to us more about their business and their pain points. And so you might already know the answer to this calibrated question, but it's not for you gaining a specific answer. It's so that you can understand their business and get them warmed up and talking. So a basic calibrated question that I like to ask is, can you tell me a little bit more about your e-commerce strategy? What does that look like for you right now? So all of that together would basically sound something like, so they tell you we're not taking Amazon sellers. I say, completely understand where you're coming from. Makes perfect sense. We encourage the same thing with many of our existing brand partners. If you don't mind me asking, can you tell me a little bit more about your e-commerce strategy? What does your presence look like on Amazon, and how does that tie in with your business? Right. And so now I'm asking an open-ended question, and they start to give their answers about Amazon. And then from there, we sort of dance with them through the rest of the conversation. And we're able to overcome their objections by, one, providing value, but two, more importantly, selling the value in a way that is important for their business. So I'll give one simple example, right? So rather than just telling a brand that you're going to run ads for them, or rather than just telling a brand that you're going to control their pricing, tell them why that's important, right? So tell them, we're going to run ads, but the focus of the ads is going to be to secure more digital real estate, so that it's similar to like an end cap in Walmart or an ad in the newspaper. We are going to secure more digital real estate for you guys, and in an effort to grow the overall equity of the brand and make the customer shopping experience more robust, to grow sales volume, to create a more cohesive selling environment for your brand on Amazon. And those different things that I just mentioned there, the sales volume, the more robust Amazon presence, and the more cohesive presence for the brand equity, those are all ways to sell the vision. And I spoke about earlier on in the video, brands have a vested interest in their game on Amazon, and they have a vested interest in their brand as a whole. And so we can use that to our advantage by explaining these value propositions, but more importantly, selling them to the brand in a way that actually ties into the things that matter to them, which are brand equity, customer loyalty, cohesion, customer shopping experience, and so on.
And then in terms of the initial outreach, that was really good game on like negotiating around. So obviously cold calls are better. Cold emails work, but cold calls significantly better, right? Because it's way easier to email someone than it is to call someone. So calling, you get way better results because it's significantly more personalized. So what does horrific outreach look like? And what does really good outreach look like in return to me being a potential seller of your wholesale brand? Like, what should I be looking to say to you, for example, just theoretically? Like, what does really good outreach look like and terrible outreach look like?
Yeah, love this. So let's first go over the terrible outreach. So because this is what a lot of Amazon sellers do is, hey, we're interested in selling your products on Amazon, right? That would be your initial outreach. That's terrible. Or you say, hey, we would like to sell your products on Amazon, right? Or, hey, we sell on Amazon, we're looking to carry your products in bulk. It's just, I cringe every time I hear that, because you're introducing yourself not professionally. You are saying Amazon in the first word of the sentence. You are asking the brand what they can do for you, not what you can do for them, right? And so in any good relationship, value is reciprocal. But the best way to start a relationship is by providing the value first to them continuously. And so now that we've spoke about what you don't want to say on the phone, initially, let's talk about what you do want to say. And what you do want to say is you want to introduce yourself as professional and legitimate. So I would say, yes, hi, my name is Brad. I'm calling with my company, Operation AMZ, out of insert your location. I'm calling because we're interested in opening a wholesale account. Am I speaking with the right person for that? So that's the first thing, is I want to cut through those gatekeepers and understand if I'm talking with the right person. From there, if I am talking with the right person, I'm going to say, perfect. I'm going to take less than 60 seconds to tell you a little bit more about our business, right? And so then I'll get into, we're an e-commerce company. We stock and ship to our facility located in insert your location.
Doesn't have to be a warehouse. Some suppliers need commercial, but you can set up prep center. Worry about that when it comes up.
Guys, and
negotiate around it.
Guys, I've been saying we stock and ship to our facility since I was calling from my bedroom. You do not need to have a facility to be doing this, right? So you could be running a 7-figure business out of your house. Like, you don't need a facility to do wholesale. It's plus, it'll help you scale, but definitely don't need it right away. And so I'll say we have our own website. We do sell on Amazon. Can you tell me a little bit more about your e-commerce presence? What does that look like for you right now? And so let's just take note of what I did there in the last part of that script. I said, we have our own website and we do sell on Amazon, but I immediately flew over the fact that I sell on Amazon, and I asked them a question to then put the ball in their court. So I do that intentionally, so I'm not drawing attention to the word Amazon, because Amazon's going to be a red flag for them. But at the same time, we have to get out of the way early that we do sell on Amazon. That's another mistake beginners make, is that they never tell the supplier that they sell on Amazon. And then later on, they have to go back on what they said before. And it's just not a good look, right? So we have our own website. We do sell on Amazon. Can you tell me a little bit more about your e-commerce strategy? What does that look like for you right now? And so I'm flying past that initial objection, and I'm not even allowing them to object to the fact that I said Amazon. I'm asking them about their business with the intention of uncovering more information that I'm going to use later in my process.
Bang, there we go. Cool. So that was a masterclass on outreach. Now, for beginners watching this, pretty deep into a video, right? So they're clearly very serious about this. What are the mistakes they should be looking for? Like, say, like top 3-4 mistakes beginner wholesale sellers are making in 2026.
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of mistakes, well, I mean, the first thing is that I think I mentioned it earlier on in the video, which is just jumping on too good to be true deals, and this applies to brands too. Like, not every single brand is legitimate and wanting to work with you professionally. Like, there are brands out there that are after a cash grab, right? And so too good to be true deals, definitely want to avoid those. Shady suppliers, so those red flags that we talked about throughout the video. Definitely, you don't want to go too deep on one particular ASIN. So I always advocate placing test orders, right? Even if you think that this is like the winning product, you get super excited about it because you finally closed this wholesale account, and you've probably been calling a lot of suppliers and be getting a lot of rejection, and you finally landed your first deal, and you want to jump into it, with a $10,000 order or $5,000 order. I always recommend, no matter at what level, to place a test order first. And that's going to mitigate a ton of risk for you in growing and scaling your business. And so when you place that test order, I generally recommend that you do anywhere in the range of like 20, 30, 40 units, somewhere in that range. And then you're going to get that inventory in. You're going to get the positive reinforcement of selling that inventory through your actual selling account. And then you place that bigger order where you're going to hold about a 30 to a 45-day supply. And so definitely some of the biggest mistakes you want to avoid are too good to be true deals, shady suppliers, and even shady brand deals. And then jumping into things too much too early, because not only are you going to be exposing yourself to more risk if something goes wrong or the price tanks or a bunch of sellers jump on it, you're also going to be using up a lot of your capital on one initial purchase.
100%, dude. Absolutely. And then the big thing to understand, if you're an existing OA or RA retailer or online arbitrage seller, is you don't jump into this stuff immediately. You gradually scale into it. So what would you say are like the tips for people that already understand the Amazon platform? They've been watching my videos for a while. They've sold some stuff. They maybe are full-time sellers now, and they want to start putting some wholesale in mix to add more predictability and long-term scalability. Maybe delegate to virtual assistants, get a prep center downline, get your own warehouse down. Like what do you have tips for existing Amazon sellers?
Yeah, absolutely. So arbitrage, or retail online arbitrage sellers that are currently selling, this is exactly how I started, was in arbitrage, and I transitioned to wholesale. And for a period of time, I was doing hybrid, where I was actually heavy in retail arbitrage more so than I did online arbitrage. So I was going to the stores, and I would do that on the weekends, right? I would go to the stores on the weekends, and I would continue, running the arbitrage operation on the side on the weekends. At nights, I was packaging everything up and shipping it into Amazon. But I was also trying to scale wholesale. And so I was taking my days during the week to actually contact those suppliers, and because that's when the suppliers are going to be in the office. So you can run this business model hybrid. It's not, all or nothing. You don't have to you don't have to just completely shut down your arbitrage business in order to do wholesale. In fact, I probably wouldn't recommend that right
No,
away.
definitely not. Yeah.
But one thing to bear in mind is that singular focus wins every single time. And so for the person that's doing 100% wholesale and is focused 100% on wholesale, is always going to beat the person doing arbitrage and wholesale. It's just the way the game works. And so when you feel as though the pain points of arbitrage are greater than the benefits for you, that's when I would say it might be time to jump, use arbitrage as a stepping stone, which is, still a great business model. But use it as a stepping stone into wholesale, right? Because then you're going to be singularly focused on one model. And so another thing to note is that, like, if you're doing arbitrage, right, and you're at 10K a month revenue, it's easier to walk away from 10K a month revenue than it is to walk away from 100K a month revenue, than it is to walk away from $1 million a month revenue. And so a lot, and this is what we see with a lot of the students, is that those that come from arbitrage getting into wholesale, they will continue their arbitrage replens, and then they will transition the outreach into wholesale, right? So they're not doing new sourcing for arbitrage as much. They're just continuing their replens, and then they're going into wholesale. Another thing you can do is you can hire an all-star virtual assistant to do the sourcing in arbitrage for you. And so now because you already learned how to do arbitrage sourcing, right? So now you can systemize it and delegate it to virtual assistants, and they can continue bringing in the revenue from the arbitrage component of the business as you venture into the new business model, wholesale. And then you learn that model, do the sourcing, do the outreach. And then once you learn that model, you can outsource different things in wholesale too.
Yep, 100%, man. So really appreciate all you guys watching. Brad, for people who want to check out your content and how you can help them, where can people find you on social media and YouTube?
Yeah, absolutely. So YouTube and all social media platforms, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, is Operation AMZ. I highly recommend going to the YouTube channel. There's in-depth tutorials, tons of game on there. So definitely check it out.
Yep. So thanks a lot for doing this, man, as well. We'll pop up all your links down below at the link in the description. So definitely check out all Brad's content, subscribe for more, and then we'll pop up the full-on gating course and the online arbitrage startup guide on the screen right now if you want more good educational content. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Let us know any questions down below. Brad, you down to go in the question down below in the comments and answer some of the questions that come into as well?
Absolutely. Pop them in there. Yep.
Boom. Cool. All right. Thanks a lot, man. And thanks a lot, everyone, for watching.
All right. Thanks, guys. See you next time.